As little as long ago, or as far away as forever, this is where we meet to celebrate what never was as it comes to pass. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Fallen Angels TV, and I thank you for joining me on this Sabbath broadcast. And for those of you that have been longtime listeners, and even those of you that are just now joining us, finding fellowship with us, I appreciate all of you taking the time to listen and to, we're learning from each other. I don't consider myself any great authority on the scriptures. I have read a lot of things that a lot of people have not heard about, but I think that comes with, having more time than maybe a lot of you do have, because so many are, just busy surviving and struggling to make it day to day, and having to work multiple jobs or even take care of multiple kids, which that's multiple jobs in itself. But having been blessed with the time that I do have to study and to delve into scriptures, usually I like to spend at least a couple hours every day, sometimes up to 4 and 5 hours a day, reading and looking into things that are interesting to me, and a lot of new books. And so I try to bring that unique perspective, and myself having that time to go through and to spend time in research in this way. I know that a lot of you don't have that time, and so I try to share what I can that I find of interest in the various things that I read through, the books that I study from, the different news clips and items that each one of you are sending to me and sharing with me in that way. And so for that, I am grateful also for the dialogue and the conversation, and for the things that you do send to me. There's one thing that I want to go ahead and cover. There's a couple news stories that I'm going to speak on before we go into the show on the narrow and the broad way. And one of those has to do with something that Tim Sweeney had sent to me. It's a news clip, and I will post it for those of you that do have access to the chat room. This is very interesting and also very disturbing, especially when you consider the amount of debt that Barack Obama has strapped onto this country. Those of you that do have access, I did post a link down there at the bottom of the chat room. It will not take long at all to go through this news clip, but I used to be involved in politics a great deal when I was an advocate for people with disabilities, and when I actually believed that we had some kind of sway on the electoral process, and that, even though I didn't believe after the institution of the electronic voting machines that we really had one vote, one person kind of authority, I felt like, at least with civil disobedience and the way that one of the groups I was involved in is a group named Adapt, and they were very well organized and well coordinated, so that we would have 400 or 500 people come together in wheelchairs, and then another 400 or 500 people that were the different attendants or caregivers of different individuals, and we would basically block off all the entrances and exits of different groups and different organizations that we were protesting against. for accessibility or, long-term care rights, civil rights for people with disabilities, fighting for home care instead of that of institutions, or fighting against the agenda of euthanization, and because they're starving and dehydrating people, especially the elderly and the disabled, in this country, in every state of the nation, on a daily basis, especially those that have a living will, which restricts your care. This is the kind of thing that has precedent since the Terry Schiavo, all of that. With that set the precedence for this kind of thing to be done everywhere in America, and it is on a very covert and clandestine kind of way. People, and another thing that ties along with this is the targeting of individuals for their organs, and especially those that are organ donors. You do not receive the kind of emergency care that other individuals might receive, just because the hospitals can make more money off of delving out your organs than they can in saving your life. And there's been a number of shows where I've covered this topic, and you can go back through the archives to study this. I also made a movie called The Judicial Murder of Terry Schindler Schiavo, which you can find on YouTube. It's freely available, where I cover all of this and spoke about some of these things that are going on in America and other aspects of the world. But anyways, I know now that I'm not involved in politics anymore, because I know the right and the left is a false paradigm. And in this past show that I did on Revolution Radio, I exposed that in a great deal, the false left-right paradigm, and how the Illuminati, the New World Order, they fund both sides of the agenda, and that they catch people in the middle, and they waste a lot of individuals' effort, time, and focus in the debate of the left and right, when both sides are controlled and basically, two sides of the same coin. But anyways, this particular article is Obama gives away Alaskan islands to Russia with for $0, and that these particular islands, 7 of them, are full of natural resources, not only mineral rights, but that are loaded with billions and billions of dollars worth of gas, natural gas and oil, petroleum, and as well as other natural resources. And he did this in a very hush-hush kind of way. And I've been meaning to call my representatives and voice my outrage at his having done so, because they have done it and are getting away with it because nobody's saying anything about it, and the media is not reporting on it. And so I want to at least let them know that it just disgusts me that he would do such a thing, even though, I know that the whole communist capitalism, again, that's controlled opposition, and that the New World Order, that, these are Obama, Putin, and all of the other world leaders, they're Masons, and they're part of secret societies, that their allegiances are not for their countries or for their people, but for the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid, and that they are working for Satan's protocol, and that is the New World Order. And so I'm going to read just a little bit of this because it should outrage you as well, especially considering, the trillions and trillions of dollars that a debt that have been strapped onto this country and the billions of dollars in interest that are being paid daily just to, keep down some of the debt, which we're never ever going to be able to pay it. And they've done that just to bring America to our knees, and also to give away to the Chinese and to other investors that are still, buying up, which nobody really is buying up our debt anymore. It's the Federal Reserve that is perpetuating the cycle of it. But that we're giving away infrastructure, roadways, interstates, state buildings, national parks, things of that nature, land, resources, ports, like, the deep water ports in California and the Bahamas, things like this. We're giving away to these foreign nations, these foreign countries that hate us and want to see our downfall in efforts of organizing it and orchestrating it. And the leaders of this country have sold us out, and they are working with our enemies for our downfall. We know that there are Russian and Chinese peacekeeping troops, communist troops in this country, manning all the different FEMA bases, and that's part of that whole protocol for the destruction of America. All right, continuing with this article. You won't see this on the 6 o'clock news. Obama donates 7 Alaskan islands to Putin for $0. This is what our beloved President Obama has done in 2012 for America so far this year. This was just sent to me and got very little press to keep it unknown from the American public. Please read the following of what is happening and why is he getting away with all of this. Is there a rest of the story? This article on February 16, 2012 appears in very few places. Apparently, the regular professional reporters consider Obama giving away islands belonging to Alaska and part of the United States as no big deal. Obama is giving away these islands to Russia for free, no cost, zero money, or any other consideration. And guess what? The state legislature in Alaska voted several times in opposition to the giveaway, but the islands have billions of barrels of oil, and Obama could let oil companies lease parts of the island and start drilling for more oil. Should you suspect Obama was trying to sneak this by? Why? WorldNetDaily.com, Obama's State Department is giving away 7 strategic resource-laden Alaskan islands to the Russians. Yes, to the Putin regime in the Kremlin. The 7 islands in the Arctic Ocean and Bering Sea include one the size of Rhode Island and Delaware combined. The Russians are also to get the tens of thousands of square miles of oil-rich seabeds surrounding the islands. The Department of Interior estimates billions of barrels of oil are at stake. The State Department has undertaken the giveaway in the guise of a maritime boundary agreement between Alaska and Siberia. Astoundingly, our federal government itself drew the line to put these 7 Alaskan islands on the Russian side. But as an executive agreement, it could be reversed with the stroke of a pen by President Obama or Secretary Clinton. The agreement was negotiated in total secrecy. The state of Alaska was not allowed to participate in the negotiations, nor was the public given any opportunity for comment. This is despite the fact that the Alaska legislature had passed resolutions of opposition, but the State Department doesn't seem to care. The imperiled Arctic Ocean islands include Wrangel, Bennett, Janet, and Henrietta. Wrangel became America in 1881 with the landing of the U.S. Revenue Marine ship Thomas Corwin. The landing party included the famed naturalist John Muir. It is 3,000 square miles in size. All right. I'm not going to read the rest of the article. It tells you about how the islands were discovered. But it is ridiculous to me that this kind of thing occurs in a hush-hush kind of way, and that the federal government trumps states' rights and just does this, shafts the states and the people, and that it's idiots like Obama, which he's nothing more than a puppet on a string, that they just have such are so arrogant as to just do these kind of things and think they can get away with it. And of course they do, which is another disturbing thing about what's going on in the world today. And so anyways, two other real quick pieces of news, and then we're going to go into the topic of the discussion for today, which will be the narrow and the broad way. And I also have an important piece of news to share with all of you. Well, one other thing, Michael C. Rupert was found. It says that he had committed suicide. I don't believe it. And for those that don't know, he was the one that wrote Crossing the Rubicon, and that spoke about peak oil, even though I don't believe in peak oil. But he also did bring out information on 9/11 and the way that governments fund terrorism and, work through the controlled opposition. So pray for his family and God rest his soul. And because I definitely don't believe that, he was committed suicide, even though they're trying to push that story. Another thing which is of interest and which is connected to a couple things that I have learned about in rereading the book of Jasher, because I did finally get it in print, and I read it over the course of a week. It was about 300 plus pages, but very interesting, and I was glad to do that again because there was some very interesting aspects of what is not covered in the King James Version of the Bible and certain other texts, which the book of Jasher parallels the 5 books of the Torah leading up to Joshua going into the land and clearing out the people in Canaan and fighting against the giants. But anyways, 2 things that were of interest, which will go along with the story I'm about to share with you. I'll post a link in the chat room so that you can look this up as well. It's interesting, and I will be posting it to the Fallen Angels TV website. And for the new listeners, I do invite you to join us there for discussion and dialogue with the other truth seekers that share fellowship there. The topic of this story says, demonic half-man, half-beast found near Crimea. And this was released on April 18th, 2014, so just yesterday. And it was a Russian news report. There's a video linked to the source, but it says this, just a couple paragraphs long. Weird, strange, unusual, and inexplicable are the first words that pop into the head with this Russian news item. Translated into English in the subtitles in the video below, of remains found in Russia that have scholars mystified. The remains appear to have a sheep's body, but a human head and or upper half. The title on the video uses the term satyr, which is not technically correct because in Greek mythology, satyrs have faces and bodies like men and ears, legs, and tails like goats. But the concept is still an animal body and a human head. This odd creature-like skeleton was found on the Cuban river banks and has anthropologists intrigued. As is explained via translation, this is the second such being found with this abnormality. There is also a finding mentioned of a war horse with incredible size. As the second screenshot from the video below shows, one of the men that discovered this says a human sheep with one of the old demons. And so you can check it out. There is a photo of the skeleton, but what I'm going to share now is from the book of Jasher. And there's two instances. One of these my friend Jose made me aware of, and it's from chapter 36 in the book of Jasher. For those that want to read it for themselves, I'm going to start with verse 31. And it says this: "And afterward, about 120 great and terrible animals came out from the wilderness at the other side of the sea. And they all came to the place where the asses were, and they placed themselves there. And those animals from their middle downward were in the shape of the children of men. And from their middle upward, some had the likeness of bears, some the likeness of kephas, with tails behind them from between their shoulders, reaching down to the earth, like the tails of the duchapath. And these animals came and mounted and rode upon these asses, and led them away, and they went away unto this day. And one of these animals approached Anah, and smote him with his tail, and then fled from that place." All right, so very interesting description in the book of Jasher, which is mentioned 2 times in the Old Testament in reference to the book of Jasher, is these hybrid beings, which Berosus also speaks about a number of different hybrid beings that were created by the fallen angels in their attempts to make a slave race, and that a number of different hybrid beings were found during the prior times. And we have, the different mythologies which speak about creatures such as the Minotaur, the Harpy, the Gorgons, things like the Centaurs. And so another particular passage which I recently found in the book of Jasher, it's from chapter 61, and I'm going to begin with verse 14. If those of you would like to look it up and read it for yourself. It says this: "And it was one day that Zepho lost a young heifer, and he went to seek it, and he heard it lowing round about the mountain. And Zepho went, and he saw, and behold, there was a large cave at the bottom of the mountain. And there was a great stone there at the entrance of the cave. And Zepho split the stone, and he came into the cave. He looked, and behold, a large animal was devouring the ox. From the middle upward it resembled a man, and from the middle downward it resembled an animal. And Zepho rose up against the animal and slew it with his sword." The rest, if you read the rest of it, it talks about how they honored Zepho for killing this hybrid creature. because many oxen and many cattle were disappearing, and the people knew about this creature and this beast, but they could do nothing against it. And so I thought it would be interesting to share these two passages from the book of Jasher. And for those that don't know, the Bible also speaks about the lion men of Moab, which is another hybrid creature. And that when you read Maccabees, the book of Maccabees, number 4, which speaks about the different tortures that this king had brought upon the Hebrew people of the time in trying to force them to eat food sacrificed unto idols or to blaspheme their gods, that he had these lion men of Moab to render such tortures. And so that's another interesting book that confirms and speaks about the lion men of Moab. All right. Anyways, very, very interesting in that we see that the Bible and the Old Testament and certain extra canonical texts, that they also verify the accounting of what Berosus was speaking about. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about with Berosus' accounting, I'm going to look it up for you real quick and read it, because it's another one of those things, especially for those of you that are new to this particular study and that don't understand about the mythology, the hybrid creatures, the things that were created by the fallen angels so long ago. And I know it sounds absolutely crazy and totally lunatic fringe to talk about these things, and especially for people that have no basis in the mythologies and the oral traditions that speak about these hybrid different creatures, even with the Nagas, which were, part human and part reptilian, and that even the Nakash is one of these dragon-like, the feathered serpent, some of these creatures. Anyways, Berosus' account says this: there was a time in which there existed nothing but darkness and an abyss of waters, wherein resided most hideous beings, which were produced of a twofold principle. There appeared men, some of whom were furnished with 2 wings, others with 4, and with 2 faces. They had one body but 2 heads, the one that of a man, the other that of a woman, and likewise in their several organs, both male and female. Other human figures were to be seen with the legs and horns of goats. This is like the satyr that is described, the ancient account of the satyr. Some had horses' feet, while others united the hindquarters of a horse with the body of a man, resembling in shape the centaur. Bulls likewise were bred there with the heads of men, and dogs with 4-fold bodies, terminated in their extremities with the tails of fishes. Horses also with the heads of dogs, men too, and other animals with the heads and bodies of horses and the tails of fishes. In short, there were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animals. In addition to these, fishes, reptiles, serpents, with other monstrous animals, which assumed each other's shape and countenance, of all which were preserved delineations in the temple of Belus at Babylon. And the Sumerian teachings also speak about the genetic experimentation, the crossing of animal and plant DNA, the mixing of different creatures to attempt to try to create a slave race. And so all these things are found in the ancient accounts, and the ancient stories, and even the oral traditions of different peoples of the world. All right. So we've covered the news stories that I wanted to speak about today, but now I'm going to look up a passage, and then we're going to get into the two ways, the narrow and the broad way. Let's see if I can find this real quick. And these two ways of being are connected to the war in heaven that took place so long ago. Oh, I have one other news story to share with you, and it's huge for me. And I did want to kind of break this to you, but also the next few shows that I'm going to be doing are connected to what I'm about to tell you, and that is I was contacted by Stan Johnson of the Prophecy Club, and he's asked me to prepare 5 30-minute segments. And so I'm going to be asked to come on to a show and to discuss some of the things that we cover in the course of, all of this, what has come to be like a ministry, even though I don't consider myself, a pastor or preacher or minister or anybody of an authority in that kind of way. I'm just basically a seeker of truth, a person that has researched and studied a lot of different texts that not a lot of people have, and that has been brought to discernment on the gospel and the full summation of all of these ancient mysteries and mythologies and religions, to understand them in a way that unites them all, ties them to also the geological, the archaeological record of the planet, and helps one to understand both the prior times as well as that of the Second World Age, and that that of what we are dealing with as the modern age, the last 7,000 years of history. And so I'm going to prepare those in segment and then share them with you and get your feedback on what I should add or what I should leave out. And if I'm presenting the information, what would be the most important aspects of all of the things that I cover and that I speak about here, because there is so much, and really even 2.5 hours is not a lot of time, especially considering the scope of my work and all of the strange and esoteric things that I do cover and talk about in all of the work that I've done, even in just the last 3 books that I've written, or the last 4, but specifically the Lucifer, Father of Cain, the Sons of God, and Skyfall. And even though my 5th book, Awaken to the New World Order, is very much, I feel, important as far as the conspiratorial side of what we're dealing with as a world. The other 3 have a biblical focus and a prophetic focus as to what is being spoken about by Christ when he's speaking about the harvest, and even the setup, the Genesis 3:15, the enmity between the seed of the woman, the seed of the serpent, and then the Matthew 13, the parable of the wheat and the tares, and what Christ speaks about as the harvest. because they're both linked. And again, it's both of those things are connected to what we're going to be talking about from Matthew chapter 17 or 7 for the rest of the show. And that would be those that follow the narrow way and also those that follow the broad path to destruction. And to set the premise for the rest of this, I'm going to read chapter 7 in Matthew, starting with verse 13. It says, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, few there be that find it." And so the narrow way would be that of for the elect and the righteous. And we know that this is, the narrow way is for a minority, an elect few, those that are the righteous, those that are seeking truth, that are living for the kingdom, and that make priority of their focus, their time, and their effort to seeking the Most High, and that are considered their eternal inheritance the most important aspect of why they are here and what they are to do. Because all of us are coming to remembrance, but not, it says in the Word that many are chosen, but few heed the call. And that's the way it is with the world. We are all constantly, that the Spirit is knocking constantly and asking us to listen to that aspect of ourselves. That the Holy Spirit is trying to lead us to remembrance and wants, Christ and the Most High God, the Father and the Son, the Holy Spirit, they are all seeking relation with us on a daily basis. But so many are so wrapped up in the carnal aspects of life and our fleshly being that they don't listen to that aspect of themselves. And they don't make a priority of their role and their mission, their remembrance and their focus for being here, their true role and mission and focus for being here in the flesh, which is to redetermine our allegiance and to realign ourselves with Christ and finding Him as way and truth and accepting the grace of redemption and salvation that He extends and offers to each one of us. And more are apt to aligning themselves with the broad way that leads to destruction and to what I speak on as service to self, which is the thing that Lucifer and the 1/3 of the angels of the Most High that joined him in rebellion and insurrection, that's their focus, and that's their intent. That's the way that they want to do things. They don't want to be in service to others. They don't want to service even the Most High God. They want to be as gods themselves. And there's so many, even here on the planet, so many people that are similar, that are living for the same kind of thing, the power, prestige, the money, the wealth, and the ability, the desire to live as kings and queens and to rule and oppress the masses and to do as they wish. Do as thou wilt. The whole motto for the Luciferians, the Satanists that are, wanting to indulge in the pleasures of this world, that seek to, indulge in orgies and not follow the commandments and not honor others, but are seeking self-gratification, self-aggrandization. Sorry, that's a hard word to say. And so these are the two things that, even from the war in heaven, when Christ was revealed to the sons of God, all of the angels, and he was granted dominion by the Father to be, to rule. Because as the only begotten Son, he and the Father are one, and with the Holy Spirit that makes the Holy Trinity, and that they are, the Most High God together in essence and being, and that they are the ones that have true authority, and that comes from their love and their compassion, their righteousness, and their just omnipotence, in that they rule from a place of love and service, and they example that to all of us. Because when you have a God or a king that does not rule from a place of love and service to his flock, his sheep, and to those that are under his directive, then you have chaos, and you have corruption, and you have tyranny. And that's what we have had with every government. And those governments that did not follow the commandments and that did not aspire to live as directed by the Most High God, who would have us rule as he would rule, which is in love and compassion and care and concern for every individual under the authority and the rulership of such monarchy. And that I'm grateful that we have a God, a loving, compassionate God that has the authority and has the power to rule in such measure. Because all of us, the angels and humanity, being given free will and not being able to live up to such beauty and omnipotence, we fall short. We fall short. And even when we love God and love Christ and try to aspire to such example, even the angels, look at what the angels done, and not just those that were the rebel angels and that joined Lucifer in rebellion. Even the watchers that fell during the time of Yared. 200 angels that fell during the time after humanity was brought upon the face and brought into the presence of this world, this fallen world in a fallen state of being. They lusted after the daughters of humanity. They desired to be like the rebel angels and to rule and to share their knowledge and to use it as a way to manipulate and control others. And so we're lucky, so very, very lucky to have a God, and that He has a Son, and that the Holy Spirit also, that all of them are benevolent in such way that they keep everything in harmony, and that all of nature reflects such dynamics, that everything works in perpetual harmony, and it reflects the beneficence of our God and the Creator. And so there will be a one day when all things are restored to the natural harmony, even though right now we are learning through the duality the knowledge of good and evil. And right brain in the chat room says, I like that he left it to us to decide. I don't think it could be done any other way, that even the angels and humanity, that we had to have free will to determine what we would want for our focus, and how we would want to be, and whom we would want to aspire to be like. And that we are given this choice to determine whether we would go down the narrow way or to follow the broad path to destruction. And that as angels, we were granted the same kind of free will, and that the war in heaven, the separation of light and darkness, that created the cataclysm that gave us the choice to, with being servants under the monarchy of the Morning Star administration, or to follow the broad path and like Lucifer and the rebel angels that joined him, to want to be as gods ourselves, and to go about seeking kingdoms to rule of our own, because they did. And they took over. The Father and the Son gave them temporary authority over this fallen world, this dark earth, and that they did many things that corrupted the creatures, the totality of the natural working order of the planets and the systems that were put into place that govern over the creation. And that they corrupted everything to such a degree that the Father and the Son had to destroy things like Atlantis, destroy Tiamat, the planet Earth that it used to be, and also to destroy the planet again in a flood. That they had corrupted things so utterly and so completely that several times the Most High has had to wipe the slate clean and to begin things anew in order to give the chance, in order to give nature and the creatures and the creation and even humanity a chance to begin anew without the prevalence of evil. And even the Second World Age, with the modern creation of Adam and Eve, that was a whole nother chapter. And it would be actually the final chapter, because it would be after this second world age that evil will be wiped out, even if it's for a time. That certain aspects are going to be wiped out, and that those that support evil, angelic or human, that many will, it would be better for them to never have been born, as the Bible says. And so that's what we're seeing. That's what we find ourselves. That's, one of the reasons we find ourselves in the flesh. And so even in the flesh, when the second world age began with Eve, who was the mother of all living, and that the two different bloodlines, Cain, born from what would be the beguilement of the Nakash, the seduction of Eve by the serpent, not the snake, but the serpent, that this particular serpent was a feathered dragon-like being, a magician or an enchanter, and that he was responsible for siring the line of Cain, and that Cain was the first hybrid born upon this planet from such fornication. It says adultery. And so Abel was born of the marriage of Adam and Eve, in that he was a natural procreative child of what would be the first holy matrimony, the first marriage blessed by the Most High. And that it would be through Abel, if he were to have children, which he was killed by his half-brother Cain. And so Seth, the third-born son of Eve, second-born son of Adam, that Seth would be the one to propagate the line of the patriarchs, the seed of the woman. And that from the time of Cain and Abel, we would have this war between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and that this would lead also to the continuation Debbie is asking, where do we read this? You would really, Debbie, if you wanted to read about all these things, you would have to read my books, because all of this is part of the series that I've written about, and you can find all of also the source material and all of the myriad books I reference to postulate and to piece together this premise. And that when I present it to you in the books that I've written, namely beginning with Lucifer, father of Cain, and then going into my sixth book, Sons of God, which Lucifer, father of Cain, is my fourth book. My sixth book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, it continues with the story of the war in heaven and also the fall, which leads to the enmity between the two different bloodlines, and also the free will choice to follow the narrow or the broad way, which is the path of service to self or service to others, which was exampled by Christ when the apostles asked him who among them were greatest, and then he bent down to wash their feet, and in that way showed that he who was greatest, that was a disciple and a follower of Christ and of the Creator and the Most High God, was a servant, and that this is the way of the priest. The way of the priest and the way of God in is service to humanity, and service to the sheep, and service to the flock. And that's why God in all of the throughout the Old and New Testament preferred shepherds who tended their flocks, like David, who was a shepherd, and even Abram, and even the Isaac and Jacob. They tended flocks. They took care of animals. The way of the shepherd. Because that's what God is. That's what the Most High is. He is a shepherd. He takes care of all of us. And so that is the narrow way, is the way of service to humanity and to others. And the other way, the broad path of destruction, that is service to self. And that the fallen angels, the rebel angels, and the watcher angels, and those that follow the New World Order, they represent the way of the kings, in that the kings place themselves and their intent and their focus over that of their people, and that they believe that the people are there to serve them and not vice versa. And that many, the Lucifer, the rebel angels, the New World Order, the kings and queens, the prime ministers, they claim the divine right of kings, which gives them the authority and the power to rule as they wish and to do as they wish. That the way of Luciferianism and Satanism, do as thou wilt, this is their directive, their focus. The monarchies, it is all for them. It's all about them, that everybody should suffer and everybody should starve, just so long as that they can indulge in riches and in meals, and to do what they want with the collective authority and the collective riches of all the people under them. To take multiple wives, to have concubines, basically do as they want, do as they wish. That is the way of the kings. And so that's the difference in what we see between the two ways of being. And this is the lesson for us, in that the Most High has given us free will, given us chance to determine how we want to be. And so all of us must decide, while we are in our flesh embodiment and with our focus, with our behaviors, with our heart, whether we want to be priests or kings, whether we want to be good shepherds and to feed the flocks and to feed the sheep, and to live in the example of Christ, and to be as Christ's example to all of us, to be foot washers, to be servants unto each other, not just our children and our families and our loved ones, but unto everybody else. the poor, the widow, the orphan, those that need help that come across our path during our daily affairs and our lives. Random acts of kindness, things of that nature. Or whether we're going to aspire to make it or to elevate our status, our power, our prestige, our money at the expense of others. Because the way that business, the competitive nature that we are taught in sports and in politics and in just the way that most jobs are, we're competing with others and competing with our neighbors, and people get ahead by placing emphasis on self-glory, self-satisfaction, self-worth at the expense of others. Because there's a difference. There's nothing wrong with, self-worth in a way that is not prideful, in a way that you don't think of yourself better than everybody else, but self-worth in a way that you recognize the sacredness of everybody, and that you don't look down upon anybody else, that you recognize that the Father and the Son are dwelling within all creatures and beings, and that we all have a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and that we are all equal in the eyes of God, that we are all beautiful and all loved, no matter our shape of our form, or if we're old or young or disabled, or whatever the particular circumstances, situation, or dynamics, skin color, or male or female, or whatever, that those things, those idiosyncrasies which make us unique as beings, that we are still all equal in the eyes of God, and that we are all beautiful to the Most High God, and that we are all His children. And so, really, we all have equal opportunity and equal chance to live in our daily lives and to do what we can with our focus and our effort, and that hopefully that our behaviors will reflect respect for the commandments, the 10 Commandments as laid out to us by our God as directive for how He wants us to act and to be, in respecting our neighbors, our father and our mother, and our God. And that we should extend the same courtesy that we would want for ourselves to others, and that we should be kind to one another, and that we should love each other, and that we should be in service to one another as the Most High and as the Son examples to us in every day. Because look at all the ways that God gives to us freely, and how He has established the laws of attraction and karma and dharma, which work to propagate, even as he said, to those that have been given, more will be given, and to those that have even little, but that hoard that little and don't give it and share it, that even that will be taken from them. That the way that abundance works is that when you share that abundance, that is multiplied. When you share with others and clothe others and give to others, tithe to others, that those things are multiplied. That the good that we share with the world and with our God and the rest of creation, that when we do goodness, goodness returns unto us. There was a movie not long ago, I believe it was called Pay It Forward. And that movie shows, it presents how things really are and really do work in that way. That if you are focused on negativity and that you are creating chaos for yourself and for others, and that you are committing evil, that you are focused on service to self at the expense of others, that karma really comes upon you and is directed towards you because of your way of being. And when you're good and share goodness and perform random acts of kindness and do good unto others, goodness is reflected and it multiplies and it comes back on you. In my experience, that is the way that I have found that the law of energy and attraction, the magnetics and dynamics of light and energy and sound and frequency and all those things, they all work in such manner. And it's my opinion that the Most High has embedded within the creation these particular laws, that all of creation works in such manner, and that energy relates with other aspects of energy in similar way. And so that's why I encourage people to be good to others, is because when you're good to the creation and to the creatures of creation and to others, goodness always seems to come back and to find you and to provide assistance and help in those times and in those places where you are struggling and need help yourself. And so, in my opinion, it's better to be the priest than to be the king. And even though it seems like those that are the kings of this world, those that indulge in the pleasures and the power and the money and the prestige, even though it seems like they may get away with, the self focus and that servicing self at the expense of others, really, karma will catch up. And even if it's not until the day of judgment, And even if it's not until that day that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess, all things that we do, all things that we say, how we are while we're here upon the planet, everything is written down, and everything is testified as to. You know, our higher self, the angels that follow us and that share the testimony of what we do in our daily affairs, that even those things that we do in darkness that we don't think that God can see or recognize, everything is known and everything is shared and everything is written into the book of life. And depending on how you are in your life and how you were over, the scope of your time here, you'll find yourself either written into or excluded and blotted out from the book of life that will determine our eternal inheritance and whether we will have part to play in a return to our first estate, and whether we will even be made judges over the angels, and whether we will be part of that next cycle of eternity, and what we will do, what the Father and the Son will have us do as servants. Because those angels that left their first estate, that left their ordinances, and that did not want to be servants, that wanted to be as gods themselves, there will be a time where they will be wiped out, eradicated as if they had never been. And then, you wonder if they'll regret their choices then. And you got to know, absolutely, to be wiped out from the creation and to not be granted a chance to be part of existence and to be conscious within the grandeur of the great mystery that we find ourselves enveloped by. I wouldn't wish it on anybody or to anybody. That even though death right now, it's a temporary transition, and that it seems, the absoluteness of death, it seems like the most scariest prospect for determination. We know, especially those that know Christ was the way and the truth and the life, and that aspire to live according to his example, and that embrace the salvation and the redemption that he's granted to all of us. We are confident in that we will be resurrected, and that he went ahead to prepare a place for us, and that the Father's house has many mansions, and that he is now even with those that were resurrected in the first resurrection, from Adam to the thief on the cross, that were taken up into paradise, that he is celebrating with those and with them, and that they are all awaiting a reunion with those of us that are temporarily parted and separated. That we're going to have a reunion again as a giant family. And that when we are brought to remembrance in a full way, when we can grasp and understand the memories of our first estate and the things that we had done prior to our flesh embodiment, and even those things that we had done while in the flesh, we're going to just have a lot of celebration to do and a lot of stories to tell. And how incredible will that be for us to be together in the face of eternity and with the embrace of God, and being able to do as the angels did, Uriel and Michael and Phanuel and Raphael, and whatever it is that the Father and the Son would wish them to do, to be servants in that capacity. In fighting against the fallen angels, or what other, if there's another episode where there is another group of angels that do go that route of service to self and wanting to be as gods themselves, or if there's another cycle of humanity somewhere, and there's a whole nother episode of the war in heavens and then the fall and the creation of another modern humanity somewhere, and that some other aspect and part of the creation goes through that. Maybe we will be the angels in that story. Who knows? But to be granted eternal life and to be able to do whatever it is that the Father and Son would have us do in servicing the creation is just going to be completely amazing, and something that we really can't even fathom. That to be able to contemplate something of that nature is just even beyond our grasp. But that we know we're not just going to be sitting around on clouds and playing harps. There's going to be a lot to do, and that the expanse of what is the universe is so great that really there are going to be the realities. There's all possibility. And so who knows the kind of things that we're going to be doing, but I know it's going to be incredible. And for us to not have to worry about the flesh, and to not have to do the things of the flesh anymore, to not have to eat and sleep, even those kind of things are blessings, and that there will be something different, that to be in our immortal nature, in our bright natures, and to have a return to our first estate. It's going to be so incredible to be able to do so much that the limits of physical dimensionality and the limits of our flesh do not allow us to do, we're not going to miss it at all. Even though it really is truly such a blessing to be in the flesh and to be able to do all the things that we do, partaking of the foods and the drinks that we have access to, even to feel the sunshine on our faces and to feel the wind in our hair and to have the sensations and the senses of smells and sounds and sights. Being in our angelic natures and being returned to our immortal status, it's going to be wonderful as well. There's going to be just incredible things for us to do that we can't even imagine right now. And so, like all of you, I look forward to that day. And in my opinion, it's really not that far off. That one lifetime in the immortal journey of soul is nothing. When we look back, it's going to be just a blink of an eye. And even though it seems so difficult and we're all so ready to not have to deal with the things of this world, for the time that we're here, let's do what we can to celebrate and to recognize the blessings of being here. So with that all, I'll see you on Wednesday. Join me on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we're going to go into some of those things I told you about as far as the outlines and the shows that I'm going to set up for the Prophecy Club. And I want to thank you, Stephanie, for having them contact me or submitting that they invite me to be a guest. God bless all of you. I love you and look forward to our return to First State. God bless all. Good night.